Hello and welcome to the United Community Channel. My name is Jack and this is your match preview for Manchester United versus Arsenal in the Premier League. The first match preview of the season. Manchester United start out with a very difficult test against Arsenal. We've got a jam-packed match preview to get into, guys. We're going to talk, of course, about Rúben Amorim. We're going to talk about the different areas of the pitch and how we may set up. We're going to talk a little bit about Arsenal as well and maybe how to get the upper hand on them. We're, of course, going to give my predicted 11 and my score predictions as well. Please do smash a like on the video, guys. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Get all of your score predictions and starting 11 predictions into the comment section below, and let's jump right into it.
Rúben Amorim, bring the glory days again. We're back from the strengthening. It's in the race around.
Now, guys, we're going to start, of course, with Rúben Amorim, and look, it's a very, very challenging start for him, it's got to be said. Not just in this Arsenal game, but Opta done a kind of a stats on who has the most difficult start to the Premier League campaign. Manchester United came out as number one. So the opening 6 fixtures are difficult for Manchester United. And Rúben Amorim has got a huge test, not only in these 6 fixtures, but throughout the entirety of the season. He spoke an awful lot last year, didn't he, about the importance of getting a pre-season and bedding in his ideas and so on and so forth. And he's got that now. And he has been heavily backed in the transfer market as well. So there can't be any more excuses. Now, do we 100% need him to win on Sunday? No, we don't. We, of course, all want to win. Of course we do. But if we don't pick up a result, it's not a red flag to throw the ties out of the pram and completely lose the rag. Of course, it's not Arsenal or a good side, but we need to see improvement, don't we? Game on game now. And of course, last season was so poor that, I don't think it would be too difficult for Manchester United to improve on last season's performances. But we've got to see some real, genuine embedding of ideas and a style of football and a show that these players are understanding and implementing what Rúben Amorim is trying to do with them. Now, look, we have had a very positive pre-season, in my opinion. The positivity around the American tour was fantastic, not just with the performances and the results on the pitch, but the camaraderie around the training camp, and players seem to be happy and they seem to be really on board with what Rúben Amorim is trying to do. So I think it's really, really important that, you carry that momentum into the start of the season. You really do have to do that. And I think if we can do that, I think results will come. Now, obviously, we're not finished in the transfer market by the looks of things as well. And there are some maybe additions you could make in midfield, maybe goalkeeper, whatever the case may be. But first and foremost, I think Rúben Amorim has been heavily backed in this transfer window, and especially with the forward line and trying to get that improved. But guys, we're going to start in specific areas here with the midfield role and the 2 number 6s that we know Rúben Amorim likes to play. And it's going to be interesting to see who takes up that mantle in this opening game against Arsenal. Now, look, we do know, of course, that Manuel Ugarte has had maybe not the greatest starts to his Manchester United career. Obviously, he came in last season and, didn't really... he had some very good performances, but he also had some very poor performances. So it was a little bit inconsistent for him. I think he is going to improve this year, and I think we are going to see him play a pivotal role in that number 6. And it's going to be interesting to see, does he settle quickly with the start of the Premier League campaign? And look, coming up against a team like Arsenal, who we know are probably going to dominate the ball more so than we are, I think it's pivotal to have somebody like him in that number 6 position where, he can break down play, he can slow up counter-attacks, but he is going to need some help there, and we're going to have to be very, very controlled in our performance in that midfield, because Arsenal will run you riot. They really will if you give them the opportunity. There can't be a scenario where Manuel Ugarte is left on his own in that number 6 position to try and cover an awful lot of ground, because, we know it's just not going to be enough to have one player trying to cover it, and, his game will be susceptible to that. Now, who is going to partner Manuel Ugarte? In my eyes, I think Manuel Ugarte is going to play, but who's going to partner him in that role? Now, look, I think first and foremost, if we're going again on the basis that Arsenal are going to have a lot of the ball, I think you could be realistically talking about Casemiro playing alongside him when we go quite defensive. And that does have a knock-on effect then to maybe where Bruno Fernandes plays, because he is going to play, of course, and who does that maybe knock out of the team a little bit. But I think to stick on Casemiro first and foremost, I think ultimately, he does give you that defensive aspect to the game and huge match experience, and he's been in huge games throughout his career. Look, ultimately we know that Casemiro's he's in the twilight of his career, really, isn't he? And maybe his days of covering ground in these legs are gone a little bit. It's clear to see, of course it is. But I think when you're talking about match experience and big game players, he certainly falls into that category. Now, you could also look at having somebody like Kobbie Mainoo, and there's been a lot of talk over the last few weeks about where's his best position under Rúben Amorim. And is it going to be the 6? Is it going to be the 10? I think ultimately, Kobbie Mainoo is probably, in my opinion, is probably better further up the field. Again, we talk about legs to cover ground. He's not the quickest. And again, I think he's had an okay preseason. Now, he's looked really, really well. He looks like he's in shape. He's after bulking up an awful lot. So maybe Rúben Amorim is thinking about using him more so in that number 6 role. And I think the advantages of having somebody like Mainoo in that number 6 role is taking the ball off of the back line, off your back 3, or linking up then with your 2 number 10s, your wing backs, so on and so forth. So there are options there. And then also we've got Bruno Fernandes, guys. And we know that Bruno Fernandes, the question marks have been over where he's going to play. Is he going to play in the 10? Is he going to play in the 6? And ultimately, I think Bruno Fernandes will end up playing more deeper. I think was it the Mason Mount goal against Everton in pre-season, you would very rarely see Bruno Fernandes play in that type of area where he will be getting goals like that. I think Bruno is more effective playing deep, where he can get on the ball, he can look to create, and of course he can back up the play then as well. But you're going to have the likes of Ugarte covering a lot of Casemiro, Ugarte covering a lot of ground if Bruno is playing beside you, because we know Bruno likes to wander, and that's a big part of his game. So that number 6 position, guys, is going to be one that we'll have to keep a close eye on. I think Ugarte does start, and we'll get into my predicted 11 in a few minutes, but I think Ugarte starts. Who's going to back him up and play alongside him in that number 6? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, guys, next up, we've got to talk about the forward line, and obviously it's been absolutely transformed over the course of the summer transfer window. And of course, we've seen the 3 main guys come in, and Matheus Cunha and Benjamin Šeško. I've been practicing on how to say Šeško, so yeah, we might go back to Šeško because it's easier. But look, ultimately, guys, we're going to start with the number 10 positions, because obviously Mbeumo and Cunha have come in, and like I said, the forward line has been completely transformed in a summer transfer window, and a lot of credit does have to go to Ineos and Rúben Amorim for pushing to get these deals done. Goals last season were they were just the main issue, weren't they? It was the number 1 problem with us last year, that goals were the problem. And we've got goals into our team now. Now, we've got goals into our team from players who have scored them last season, and we've got to continue that trend with these new players. Cunha and Mbeumo, I think, had, 36, 37 goals between them last year. And then Benjamin Šeško is coming from the Bundesliga with 13 goals. And a lot of people are saying, 13 goals, it's not an awful lot. But he had half the amount of goals that Harry Kane had. Now, you know what I mean? If you're half of the player that Harry Kane is, then, you're going to do okay. You really, really are. And he's young and he's going to be learning. But I think ultimately the 2 number 10s, guys, is it going to be our 2 main starters? That remains to be seen. I think when we're talking about Manchester United's forward line, first and foremost, in possession, we're talking about creating chances, scoring goals. But out of possession, we're talking about pressing from the front line. And, the likes of Cunha, the likes of Mbeumo, and of course we know Šeško, the size he is, I think ultimately gives you an awful lot of options to do that. And I think, look, potentially Mason Mount as well. We know that's one of his main attributes as well, is pressing from the front line and, closing down opposition. So that may be an option there as well. I think first and foremost, Cunha, he is that flair player now, and he's the one that's going to be dropping between the lines. We've seen it an awful lot in pre-season. He was dropping into them pockets, creating an awful lot of space. And when you've got somebody maybe like Bruno Fernandes playing behind him in the number 6 role, or even alongside him in one of the number 10 positions, he's going to love playing with somebody like him. But ultimately, guys, it's about chance creation and scoring goals. Now, Mbeumo, on the other hand, is somebody who hasn't obviously been in as long as Cunha, and you could see that in pre-season. He was a little bit off the mark in terms of his sharpness, match fitness, so on and so forth, and that's understandable. And I think ultimately I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mbeumo off the bench on Sunday, given the fact that he's not as up to speed maybe as the rest of the squad. But I think ultimately he will have a big part to play for to get a result on the weekend. And then, of course, guys, we've got to land on Benjamin Šeško. I think he'll play. I honestly do think he'll play. And obviously I don't want to go too much into the predicted 11, but I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is Rasmus Højlund, and we've seen how out of favour he is now. He didn't even play against Fiorentina last week, even when it was so obvious we were missing that focal point up front. So I think he's finished with Rúben Amorim unless he's really, really needed, and he'll probably be moved on before the end of the transfer window. I would take a chance on Šeško and do it, even though he's only in. I think he played in a behind closed doors friendly during the week as well, so that's obviously of benefit to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the nod. I really wouldn't. And also we've seen maybe a Cunha, an Mbeumo, Bruno playing that false 9 over pre-season, and we haven't looked as fluid. So look, ultimately it's great to have these 3 players in. It's going to be interesting to see how Rúben Amorim sets up for the first game of the season. But ultimately, I think the 3 of them will have a massive part to play if we're going to get a result on the weekend. Now, guys, let's talk a little bit about Arsenal. And obviously, there's only one place to start, and that is Viktor Gyökeres. Obviously, Manchester United were heavily linked with him over the summer. He didn't want anything other than Arsenal, so him. So, look, I think it's pivotal that we deal with Gyökeres on the weekend. He is going to be, obviously, Arsenal's main threat. He scored in pre-season, so he's off the ground running. I think dealing with his, I suppose, back-to-goal play is going to be a key, not concern, but a key issue for Manchester United's prep for this game. He likes to pin the centre-backs and lay it off to, underlapping midfield runs and so on and so forth. So I think that is something that we really, really do need to keep an eye on. We don't want him scoring at Old Trafford. We just don't. He turned us down and wanted to go to Arsenal. So the last thing we want to see is him coming to Old Trafford and scoring. Look, there are threats in other areas. Obviously, they've still got, obviously Zubimendi is a new signing. He's pivotal in the middle of the park. I think the middle of the park will be pivotal on the weekend. It's more than likely going to be Rice, Odegaard and Zubimendi for Arsenal, and that's a very solid 3 in midfield. Manchester United look to play a 4. We'll be looking to outnumber them, and I think ultimately, the defensive side of our game in comparison to the attacking part of their game could be where the game is won and lost. Also, guys, set pieces for Arsenal, and look, we know how much Mikel Arteta not relies, but I suppose uses the positive aspects of his team with set pieces. And look, I think ultimately having, and we mentioned Benjamin Šeško, he's 6'5", Casemiro may be playing big players. Are you going to play Maguire at the back alongside maybe a De Ligt to get a bit of height into your team? That may be the case, but I think ultimately dealing with set pieces with them is going to be a major aspect to getting a result out of this game on the weekend as well. Nonetheless, I don't think Manchester United are going to be massive underdogs going into this game. It's the first game of the season. Anything can happen, and I think ultimately, if our chances come to us, and we will create chances, we've got to take them. But you've also got to limit Arsenal's opportunities and defend as a unit as well. And I think United's preparation in pre-season, and the physical preparation that they've done, they look ready. They look fit. They've been dogged in pre-season, and they're toned and ready to go. So look, I think ultimately, and we'll get into my score predictions in a few minutes, I don't think it's going to be a runaway result for either team. Now, guys, let's talk about predicted 11. And look, there's a lot of areas to get into here. First and foremost, the goalkeeper situation. Now, obviously, Binder played the majority of pre-season because Andre Onana was out with an injury. Now, reports have suggested that he is in contention for the weekend. Obviously, we'll know an awful lot more once Rúben Amorim does his press conference closer to the game. Who would I like to see start in goal? I would like to see Tom Heaton start in goal, if I'm being honest with you. I think he was our best goalkeeper in pre-season. He had a couple of really, really good performances. I think ultimately it will be Binder though, guys. I don't know if Andre Onana is going to be ready. If he is, then look, all well and good. But I think, I don't think we can predict him to start. Again, like I said, similar to Šeško, I think he did play in a behind closed doors game this week. And that's maybe just to judge whether he's ready or not. But ultimately, I think it's going to be Binder. Now, the back three, guys. I think the first name on the team sheet so far, given his performances in pre-season, is going to be Leny Yoro. I think he starts 100% in that back three on the right-hand side. He's really, really composed. He looks like he's going from strength to strength, I've got to say. Now, look, I mean, there are other options there. If you were to play maybe a Maguire and De Ligt together, you could see maybe De Ligt play on that right-hand side. Look, Mazraoui hasn't kicked a ball in pre-season. Is he going to be in contention? It doesn't look like it, unless Rúben Amorim is trying to spring a surprise. I don't know. But I think ultimately, with the information that we have and the performance he's put in, it's got to be Leny Yoro. Centre of the back three then, guys, I'm going to go with De Ligt. Obviously, I think he's had a good pre-season as well. He's looking fit. He's looking sharp. And he really does orchestrate that back line for us, playing in the centre. Not the quickest, but again, we've seen last season with Maguire, he can play in that middle of a back three, and he done it with England an awful lot, and he doesn't have to have a lot of pace because he's got cover either side of him. Now, the left side of the back three is an interesting one. It looks like Heaven is going to be out, I think, with an injury, so he's kind of out of contention. And again, look, we talk, obviously Martinez is still out as well. Mazraoui hasn't kicked a ball. I think ultimately, guys, we're going to see Luke Shaw play as the left side of the back three. He's played a good bit of it in pre-season. He hasn't had poor performances. He hasn't had outstanding performances either. So I do ultimately think it's going to be Luke Shaw that makes up the back three. Yoro, De Ligt and Luke Shaw. Now, on to the wing backs. First and foremost, I think, again, similarly to Yoro, I think one of the first names on the team sheet on Sunday is going to be Paddy Dorgu, given how well he has played in pre-season. He's been absolutely fantastic. He scored, he got a couple of assists. He's looked really, really good. And I think a lot of the criticism he got last season was unjust, to be quite honest with you, because he was a young player coming into a new team, with a new manager, and all of the tactics and formations were changing. And, I think ultimately we've seen over pre-season, he's really settled in. He's put on a lot of muscle in the off-season as well. I think he's going to be absolutely 100% starting as left wing back. Now, the right side, there's a couple of maybe options here. First and foremost, we know obviously Delot can play in that position. Now, not the most convincing of players in that position as we've seen last season, but I think the defensive side of his game, maybe his aerial prowess and the physicality does maybe give him a leg up a little bit in terms of starting there ahead of somebody like Ahmad. Now, look, we've seen Ahmad play in that position quite a lot throughout pre-season, and I think ultimately, we see a knock-on effect with where is Ahmad? Here he is. Here, I think we will see a knock-on effect with whoever the back, or whoever the two number sixes are, because if Bruno's going to play a little bit higher, he's going to play in one of the number 10 roles. Does that mean Ahmad will have to play a wing back? Does he get a game at all? Me personally, I would start Ahmad. I think he gives us that attacking option further forward. And we know his defensive attributes are quite good, other than his aerial ability, obviously, because he's quite small. So I would go with Ahmad there. The two number sixes, obviously, we mentioned already that Manuel Ugarte, in my opinion, is going to be obviously set in stone there. I think who is going to partner him in that position, I'm going to go with Casemiro, guys. I'm going to go with Casemiro in that role because of obviously his big game experience and the defensive attributes to his game, given the fact that we're playing, a very strong attacking team like Arsenal. So my two number 6s are Casemiro and Ugarte. Now, the two number 10s are next, and obviously I think it's going to be no question that Matheus Cunha starts. I think Matheus Cunha starts in the left-sided number 10. He's looked one of our best forward players in pre-season, and he is a real danger there. He looks sharp. He's mad to score. We can see that as well. So I think he will play there. Now, obviously, look, Mbeumo has come in as the other number 10. Is he going to play in the right side of the two number 10s? I don't think so. Again, like I said, I think his match fitness and his match sharpness need another week or two. So, look, obviously, for that reason, I think it's going to be Bruno Fernandes playing in that other forward position alongside Matheus Cunha. And I think, we've seen in pre-season they have linked up very well. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't have a Bruno playing here instead of Casemiro, for example. You have an Ahmad playing in the other number 10, and then you have Dalot playing here like this. There are options, and that will keep the opposition on their toes. It really will, but I think ultimately we're going to see that. And then our striker guys, obviously, look, Xerxes hasn't kicked the ball in pre-season pretty much. Rasmus Højlund is out of favour. I think it's set up for Šeško to start the game as our number 9. And let's do it. I mean, what have we got to lose? You know what I mean? I think he's better than what we've got in terms of Højlund and Xerxes as a number 9. Obviously, Chido Obi is still very young. You're not going to start him the first game of the season. And then that false 9 role that we've seen maybe in Mbeumo, Cunha or Bruno play, I don't think it works as well. I say start Šeško on the weekend, and let's see what happens. But look, guys, let me know your predicted 11 in the comment section below. I think this team is absolutely good enough to go out and get a result against Arsenal on the weekend. But like I said, we need to take our chances. Now, guys, let's talk score predictions, and I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a runaway result for either team. Look, ultimately, Arsenal are the favourites going into it, but I think the bookies have Manchester United now up as far as 5th favourites for the Premier League this season. So the bookies are predicting us to have a good season. It's obviously a very, very difficult start. It really, really is. Again, I go back to what I've said a couple of times now. We've got to take our chances now when they fall. There's no excuses anymore. We've got players in the team now that can score goals. And it's going to be very difficult against the likes of Gabriel and Saliba and so on in the Arsenal backline. But when them chances fall, we've got to take them. I'm going to go with a score draw. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I think Cunha breaks his duck in his competitive debut for Manchester United. And I think, I think it's going to be a close game. I really, really do. Look, do I want Manchester United to win 3-0? You're damn right I do. But ultimately, we've got to be realistic here as well. I think we can get something out of this game. I really, really do. And I think it draws a fair result. Let me know your score predictions in the comment section below, guys. Unfortunately, there is no watch along for the game. If that changes between now and then, I will let you know. But ultimately, I'm going to the Oasis concert on Sunday in Dublin. So I won't be actually around to do a watch along. But look, please let me know your score predictions in the comment section below. Let me know your predicted level as well. Do hit the like button for me, guys. It helps the channel out a massive amount like you wouldn't believe. Please do that for us. It pushes out the videos to more people and then the channel grows and YouTube like us and so on and so forth. Do hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel as well. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers and hopefully we can get there by the end of September, hopefully. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great day. The fucking season is back. United are back. Happy days. Let's hope we can get off to a good result. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.